2 American fighters, 13 Japanese aircraft. What Captain William Omo chose to do next should have ended his career and his life. January 11th, 1945. At 7:32 that morning, Omo climbed into the cockpit of his F-60 Mustang at Mindoro Airstrip in the Philippines. Ground crews finished fueling the aircraft for what was supposed to be a routine photo reconnaissance mission over northern Luzon. Omo was 26 years old. He had flown 203 combat missions and scored just 1 aerial victory. The Japanese still operated an estimated 300 aircraft from airfields across northern Luzon. Omo had been flying combat since early 1943 with the 82nd Tactical Reconnaissance Squadron, spending over a year moving from rough airstrip to rough airstrip across New Guinea and the Philippines. For most of that time, he flew obsolete P-39s and P-40s, aircraft with too little range to reach enemy fighter zones. Other squadrons flying P-38s and P-47s claimed air-to-air victories. Omo took photographs, empty beaches, destroyed supply dumps, no glory. Before the war, he had worked as an undertaker in Pittsburgh, trained in embalming and preparing bodies for burial. Now, he documented the battlefield while other pilots became fighter aces. That changed in December 1944, when his squadron finally received the F-6D Mustang, the reconnaissance version of the P-51. It had range, speed, and the chance to finally meet the enemy in the air. On December 24th, Omo took command of the squadron and moved it to Mindoro to support MacArthur's landings at Lingayen Gulf. His first Mustang mission came on January 9th, a low-level run over Japanese airfields in northern Luzon. As he approached Togagara Airfield, Omo saw something he had never encountered during all his combat flying: a Japanese dive bomber on final approach. He closed to firing range and fired a single burst. The aircraft went down in flames. It was his first aerial victory after 202 missions. But it wasn't a fight. It was a target-caught landing. 24 hours later, Omo was airborne again. Same task: photograph Japanese airfields at Tuguegarao and Lawag, strafe targets of opportunity. His wingman was Lieutenant Paul Lipscomb, 2 F-6D Mustangs flying low, below radar coverage. Visibility was perfect, ideal for photography, ideal for spotting enemy aircraft. At approximately 900 hours, Omo looked up and saw them. 13 Japanese aircraft 2,000 feet above, flying south, 12 Kawasaki Ki-61 Tonys, and 1 Ki-44 Tojo, escorting a Mitsubishi G-4M Betty bomber. 2 American Mustangs, 13 enemy aircraft. The smart move was to stay low, let them pass, complete the mission, and go home. No one would have questioned that decision. Omo made a different one. He keyed his radio and told Lipscomb they were attacking. 2 Tony fighters stayed with the bomber, maintaining escort even as the formation collapsed around them. Omo rolled inverted and pulled into a split S, diving beneath the Betty. Coming up from below, he saw its weakest point. The bomber's belly was unprotected. No defensive guns pointed downward. He fired 1 burst. The Betty ignited instantly. Flames spread through the fuselage as the pilot tried to force the burning aircraft into a crash landing. Omo pulled up into a tight vertical spiral to regain altitude. A Ki-44 Tojo locked onto his tail. Tracer rounds passed close as the Japanese pilot pressed the attack. The Tojo was fast with a strong climb rate. Dangerous. Omo kept the spiral tight. At low speeds, the Mustang could outturn the interceptor. The Tojo began to lose airspeed. Its nose dropped. The fighter stalled and slipped away into the clouds below. Behind him, the Betty exploded. The blast was so close that Omo's Mustang shuddered violently. Debris struck the fuselage and wings as the bomber disintegrated on impact. Small hits, no critical damage. The 2 Tony escorts broke away, diving low and running for cover. Omo went after them. They were on the deck now, under 300 feet, flying flat out. He caught the first Tony and fired a short burst. It crashed in flames, his 6th kill. The second Tony kept running. Omo dove even lower, nearly skimming the ground. He pulled lead and fired. The 7th fighter went down burning. 7 kills in roughly 6 minutes of combat. The sky fell silent, broken only by smoke columns rising from the ground. Omo checked his fuel, checked his ammunition. He still had both. Lipscomb's Mustang appeared above him. During the fight, Lipscomb had been engaged with the remaining Japanese fighters. Now Omo could see 3 more smoke plumes in the distance. Lipscomb had shot down 3 Tonys. Out of 13 Japanese aircraft, 10 had been destroyed. 3 escaped into the clouds, 2 American Mustangs. No losses. They turned south together. The flight back to Mindoro would take about 40 minutes. For Omo, it was enough time to understand what had just happened. 7 aerial victories in 1 mission, ace status, and more. Most pilots spent years reaching 5. Omo had done it in minutes after waiting 16 months for a chance. Ground crews at Mindoro knew the tradition. 1 victory meant 1 victory roll over the airfield before landing. Omo was going to need 7. No one would believe it. Not at first. Nobody scored 7 kills in a single mission. As he crossed Lingayen Gulf at 10:47, Omo still had time to decide how he was going to explain what had just happened over northern Luzon. Mindoro airstrip was less than 20 minutes away. Omo used the flight time to replay the fight in his head. Every maneuver, every burst, every kill. The story had to be exact. 7 victories in 1 mission sounded impossible. Accuracy was the only thing that would make it believable. The airstrip came into view. 2 runways, rows of aircraft, support buildings. Ground crews were already waiting. They always did when combat aircraft returned. Omo radioed the tower. 2 F-6D Mustangs inbound. No damage, no casualties. 10 enemy aircraft destroyed. There was a pause. The tower asked him to repeat. Omo did. 7 kills by him. 3 by Lieutenant Lipscomb. Another pause. Then clearance to land. But Omo wasn't landing yet. He came in low over the field and pulled into a barrel roll, 1 clean rotation. The ground crew stopped what they were doing and watched. He climbed and rolled again, then a third, a fourth. By now, everyone on the airstrip knew something extraordinary was happening. No one did 4 victory rolls. Omo kept going, 5th, 6th. Officers began pouring out of the operations buildings, senior staff, colonels, generals. Everyone wanted to see who was flying 6 victory rolls and why. The 7th roll ended it. Omo entered the landing pattern and touched down at 11:09 local time, 2 hours and 27 minutes after takeoff. 6 of those minutes had changed everything. As he shut down the engine and opened the canopy, the ground crew chief climbed onto the wing, already pointing at the gun camera. Questions came immediately. Omo climbed out. His flight suit was soaked with sweat. The adrenaline was fading. His hands shook slightly, a normal reaction after intense combat. The intelligence officer arrived almost at once. The debriefing lasted 3 hours. Omo described the mission from takeoff to landing, the climb, the maneuver, the first burst, each kill, the Tojo on his tail, the Betty exploding, Lipscomb's fight, the flight home. Everything was documented. By 1400, the gun camera film was developed. The footage confirmed it all. Clear images of Japanese aircraft breaking apart, burning, falling. 7 distinct kills, all within 6 minutes. The film didn't lie. Lipscomb's debrief matched the same story from a different angle. 13 enemy aircraft engaged, 2 Mustangs attacked, 10 destroyed, 3 escaped. By 1600, it was official. Captain William Omo had scored 7 confirmed aerial victories in a single mission, becoming an ace in 1 day. Only 1 other American pilot had ever achieved more in a single engagement. Word spread fast. By evening, pilots from other squadrons were stopping by to hear the story firsthand. They asked about tactics, positioning, shooting. Omo answered the same questions again and again. Each time the story sounded impossible, each time it was true. Before that day, Omo had flown 203 combat missions and seen only 2 enemy aircraft from his cockpit. Over 2 days, he encountered 14, 8 destroyed. 3 months later, on April 1, 1945, Major William Omo stood on Luzon and received the Medal of Honor for leading an attack against overwhelming odds and destroying 7 enemy aircraft in a single action. The citation called it extraordinary gallantry. Omo knew what it really was. 6 minutes, after waiting 16 months. For most of the war, Omo's squadron flew aircraft that were never meant to produce aces. They were equipped with the P-39 Airacobra. On paper, it looked impressive, a 37mm cannon firing through the propeller hub, the engine mounted behind the pilot. In practice, it had one fatal flaw: range. The P-39 could fly just over 500 miles total. That meant barely 260 miles out and 260 back, with almost no margin. Japanese fighter bases sat well beyond that radius. The aircraft simply couldn't reach them. The squadron also flew P-40 Warhawks. Same problem. Decent for ground attack, adequate for reconnaissance over friendly or recently captured territory, useless for reaching Japanese airspace where fighters operated in strength. Meanwhile, P-38 and P-47 squadrons were racking up victories. Their pilots, Richard Bong, Tommy Maguire, flew missions where air combat was expected, where enemy fighters were almost guaranteed. Omo flew missions where seeing an enemy aircraft was statistically unlikely. Month after month, the squadron hopped from airstrip to airstrip along the New Guinea coast, photographing beaches, counting supply dumps, strafing trucks and barges. Valuable work, but not the kind that produced fighter aces. The frustration was shared across the squadron. The pilots had trained for aerial combat. They had the skill and the desire. What they lacked was range and missions that put them in position to fight. By late 1944, that finally changed. In December, the squadron received F-6D Mustangs, P-51Ds modified for armed photo reconnaissance, cameras mounted in the fuselage, 6.50 caliber machine guns retained, and most importantly, range, over 900 miles on internal fuel, more than 1,400 with drop tanks. For the first time, Omo had an aircraft that could reach Japanese airspace and come home. On December 24th, he took command of the squadron. He was now planning routes, assigning targets, leading missions. On January 1st, 1945, he moved the unit to Mindoro to support the Lingayen Gulf landings. Everything was finally aligned. January 9th marked his first combat mission in the Mustang, only his sixth flight in the aircraft. Even so, it was immediately clear. The Mustang was faster, more responsive, with better visibility than anything he had flown before. The mission was simple: fly north to Tuguegarao, photograph the airfield, assess enemy strength, return. As they approached low, Omo saw aircraft on the ground, and then movement. A Japanese dive bomber was airborne, lining up to land. Engaging was not part of the mission, but after 2 years of combat flying, the opportunity was finally there. Omo closed from behind. The Japanese pilot never saw him. One burst at close range. The bomber caught fire and crashed short of the runway. One victory. After 202 missions and 28 months of combat flying, Omo had finally shot down an enemy aircraft. That night, he couldn't sleep. That night, Omo couldn't stop thinking about the next mission. What if he saw more enemy aircraft? What if the opportunity came again? What if he finally got the air combat he had been waiting for since 1941? 24 hours later, he had his answer. The mission on January 11th began as routine photo reconnaissance over northern Luzon. 3 airfields to check: Tuguegarao, Lawag, document Japanese air strength, and return with intelligence for upcoming ground operations. Lieutenant Paul Lipscomb was his wingman. Lipscomb was 23 years old, a capable pilot who had joined the squadron in late 1944. This was his first mission where aerial combat was a real possibility. His job was simple: stay in position, protect Omo's blind spots, and engage any threats. Neither pilot expected what they found. In January 1945, Japanese forces were pulling back from northern Luzon. American landings at Lingayen Gulf were succeeding. Aircraft were being withdrawn toward Formosa, consolidating for the defense of the home islands. That explained the formation. The Betty bomber Omo encountered was almost certainly carrying something important: personnel or critical cargo. 13 fighters escorting a single bomber meant high value. The Japanese didn't commit that many aircraft to routine missions. The escort consisted mostly of Kawasaki Ki 61 Tonys, with one Nakajima Ki 44 Tojo. The Tony was Japan's answer to American fighters. Fast enough, well-armed, but not exceptional. The Tojo was a dedicated interceptor, faster, with a better climb rate, designed to hit hard. Omo's F-6D Mustang outperformed both. It was faster, dove better, and carried 6.50 caliber machine guns capable of destroying a fighter in seconds. But performance alone meant nothing. Speed was useless if the enemy saw you first. Firepower meant nothing if you couldn't get close enough to use it. The Mustang gave Omo the tools. The outcome still depended on how he used them. On January 11th, the tactical situation favored him. The Japanese formation was flying at around 2,500 feet. Omo was at 500. He could climb into position without being seen. The Japanese pilots were scanning ahead and above, not below. And the Mustang was still new to the theater. Most of them had never encountered one. When they saw two fighters climbing toward their formation, they didn't recognize the threat. They never realized what was about to hit them. The Japanese pilots assumed the two fighters climbing toward them were friendly aircraft, Tonys joining the escort. That mistake bought Omo the most valuable thing in air combat: time. Several crucial seconds passed before anyone realized the truth. Omo had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. He had studied air combat tactics, practiced gunnery, analyzed gun camera footage from successful pilots. He knew how to judge range, lead a target, manage ammunition, and maintain awareness at high speed. He had the knowledge. What he lacked was real fighter combat. One bomber shot down while landing didn't count. January 11th would. This time, he was facing alert enemy fighters, trained pilots in aircraft that could fight back. Lipscomb understood his role perfectly. Stay with the leader, cover the attack, engage targets of opportunity, do not break formation unless necessary. They flew north at 500 feet, below radar, over water, and then along the northern coast of Luzon. The weather was perfect, clear skies, unlimited visibility. At around 900 hours, Omo saw them. 13 aircraft high above heading south, 12 fighters and 1 bomber. He had 2 options: avoid contact, complete the reconnaissance, and return safely, or attack and risk everything. After waiting 3 years, the choice was obvious. Omo keyed his radio and told Lipscomb they were engaging. He didn't wait for a reply. He pulled into a climbing turn and rolled over the top, a textbook Immelmann. The 2 Mustangs climbed from 500 feet toward the Japanese formation at 2,500. Less than a minute to attack altitude. The Japanese formation held course and speed. No evasive action, no reaction. They still hadn't seen the threat. Omo rolled out directly behind them. At 6 o'clock, the most vulnerable position possible. He closed rapidly. The Mustang was faster than the Tonys. The distance collapsed to under 40 yards, point-blank range. Omo opened fire. His 6.50 caliber machine guns converged into the lead fighter. At that distance, accuracy was unavoidable. The first Tony exploded instantly. One moment it was flying formation. The next, it ceased to exist. Debris tore through the formation. Pilots finally realized they were under attack. Omo shifted his aim. The second Tony vanished in a burst of flame and metal, destroyed within seconds. The fight had begun. The formation collapsed. Pilots broke in every direction, diving, climbing, turning away. The escort disintegrated into individual aircraft reacting on instinct. No coordination, no defense, just survival. Omo had trained for this. Chaos favored the attacker who stayed calm. He picked targets methodically. Coming in from the left, he caught a Tony turning too late. One burst. It exploded. 3 kills. The remaining Japanese pilots tried to organize. 13 aircraft against 2. If they coordinated, they could still overwhelm the Mustangs. Omo gave them no time. He crossed the shattered formation and destroyed another Tony. 4. The Betty bomber was diving away now, losing altitude fast. 2 Tonys stayed with it, protecting the bomber even as everything else fell apart. Omo rolled inverted and dove beneath the Betty. He came up from below, where it had no defensive guns. At point-blank range, he fired into the underside. The bomber caught fire. 5. As Omo pulled up, a Tojo locked onto his tail. Tracers streaked past the canopy. Omo tightened into a brutal vertical spiral. The Mustang held. The Tojo didn't. It bled speed, stalled, and dropped into the clouds. Behind him, the Betty hit the ground and exploded. The 2 remaining Tonys broke away, flying low at maximum speed. Omo dove after them, caught the first at barely 300 feet. One short burst, it crashed in flames. 6 kills. He stayed in the dive, dropping even lower in nearly at ground level. Omo caught the second escaping Tony and fired. It went down burning. 7th kill. Less than 6 minutes had passed since the first shot. The fight had stretched across nearly 15 miles, starting at 2,500 feet and ending at ground level. 7 Japanese aircraft lay wrecked across northern Luzon. Omo pulled up and searched for Lipscomb. He found him higher up, still fighting. 3 more smoke columns marked the ground. Lipscomb had scored 3 kills. Out of 13 Japanese aircraft, 10 had been destroyed, 3 escaped. The battle was over. Omo checked his fuel, plenty to make it back to Mindoro. Ammunition was reduced, but fuel consumption had been minimal. 6 minutes of combat hadn't even burned half the Mustang's tanks. He scanned the sky one last time. Nothing. The surviving Japanese fighters had vanished into the clouds, running for Formosa, carrying news of what had just happened. 2 Mustangs turned south. The flight home would take about 40 minutes. Time enough to understand the scale of it. 7 confirmed kills in one mission. Most fighter pilots never reached ace status in their entire careers. Omo had surpassed it in minutes. Only one American pilot had ever scored more in a single engagement, and this had been Omo's first real fighter battle against alert, armed opponents. The gun camera had captured everything, every burst, every kill. The film would be studied, analyzed, and replayed for years. By the time the Mustangs landed, word was already spreading beyond the squadron. Reports moved up the chain of command. Confirmation was pending. By January 12th, it was official. 7 kills for Captain William Omo, 3 for Lieutenant Lipscomb. Omo's name was added to the list of American aces. Not just an ace, but something far rarer. An ace in a single day. The recognition came quickly. Within weeks, recommendations for the Medal of Honor were drafted, approved, and forwarded. Attacking 13 enemy aircraft with only 2 fighters and destroying 7 met the standard of extraordinary gallantry. On April 3, 1945, the medal was presented on Luzon by Major General Ennis Whitehead. Omo had been promoted to major 2 days earlier. The ceremony was brief. The citation was read. Photographs were taken. Then he went back to work. After January 11th, Omo continued flying reconnaissance missions over Japanese-held territory. He encountered enemy aircraft only once more during the war, 4 fighters at distance. The tactical situation wasn't right. He didn't engage. His final record was unlike any other. Before January 11th, 203 combat missions. Total enemy aircraft seen during the entire war, 14. 8 destroyed. A kill ratio no other Pacific Theater pilot matched. The F-6D Mustang he flew that day was named Snooks 5, a reference to his pre-war profession as an undertaker. Later aircraft carried variations of the name. One would eventually be called the Flying Undertaker. The war ended in August 1945. Omo stayed in uniform as the Army Air Forces became the U.S. Air Force. He served for another 2 decades, retiring in 1968 after 27 years of military service. When asked later about January 11th, Omo always gave the same answer: luck, timing, opportunity. He never claimed exceptional skill. Other pilots who studied the gun camera footage saw something else: precise shooting, perfect angles, disciplined ammunition use, complete situational awareness. That wasn't luck. That was preparation meeting pressure. January 11, 1945 showed what happens when years of waiting meet 6 minutes of opportunity and a pilot ready to act. 10 enemy aircraft destroyed meant 10 fewer threats to American crews in the air. Captain William Omo died on June 25, 1990, at the age of 72. What he did lasted 6 minutes. What it meant lasted far longer. William Omo is buried at St. Clair Cemetery in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. The Medal of Honor rests with him, the record, the recognition. But the real lesson remained. Preparation matters. 3 years of training, 3 years studying tactics, 3 years of waiting while other pilots became aces. None of it mattered, until the moment arrived. And when it did, preparation made the difference between success and failure, between 7 victories and never coming home. Omo understood something many pilots never did. Aerial combat wasn't about bravery alone. It was about skill, applied correctly. Reading the situation, using every advantage: altitude, speed, position, surprise, firepower. The Mustang gave him the tools. His training told him how to use them. Lieutenant Paul Lipscomb was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions that day. 3 confirmed kills. He survived the war and returned home. 2 pilots. 13 enemy aircraft. 10 destroyed in 6 minutes. Those 3 Japanese aircraft that escaped carried the report back. 13 attacked. 10 lost. The numbers were hard to believe, but the losses were undeniable. By January 1945, Japanese air strength in the Philippines was already weakening. Missions like this accelerated the process. Every aircraft destroyed meant fewer threats to American crews. Individual actions mattered. 1 pilot, 1 mission. 7 aircraft destroyed. No single mission won the war, but thousands like it created the conditions for victory. The Medal of Honor citation emphasized Omo's decision to attack despite overwhelming odds, 13-2. Most doctrine would call that suicide. Most pilots would disengage. Omo chose differently. Not recklessly, but based on advantage. Altitude, surprise, speed, execution. The result was flawless. 7 enemy aircraft destroyed. No damage, no American losses. Years later, historians studied the gun camera footage. Their conclusion was consistent. January 11, 1945 remains one of the most efficient fighter engagements of the Pacific War. When asked about it, Omo dismissed praise. He spoke of luck, of timing. Others who knew him understood the truth. That day wasn't luck, it was skill, finally given a chance. If this story mattered to you, take a second to support it. Hit like. It helps this history reach more people. Subscribe if you want more real documented stories like this one. And leave a comment. Even a single word lets us know you were here. These stories survive only if they're remembered. Thank you for watching.